Hi, everyone. It's Candace Craw-Goldman bringing you another episode of Quantum Realms 2022. And I got almost kind of giddy getting ready to talk to my good friend Andrew Martin today, because it's been a while since we've caught up and chatted, but I always love spending time with Andrew Martin. Andrew is an energy intuitive and a transformation guide, and he's never short of words commenting on the of the moment. And you know what? I love that. I love that. And I think it's a special, well, it's both a gift and a skill. And I'm so pleased to spend some time with you today and share some of your views about this year that we're going through, 2022. Welcome, Andrew. Do you remember the last time we talked? I actually don't.
I don't, and I'm so happy to see you again. I was thrilled when I saw your invitation to join this series come through. It's got to have been at least 2 years because, well, more, because I was in Los Angeles until the end of 2019, and then I've been in Colorado for the past 2.5 years. I'm currently on a bit of a Goldilocks tour trying to figure out where I'm going to live next. I have some ideas, but so gosh, it's probably been at least 3 years.
Yeah, it might have been that 2019 springtime. And I actually have listened to at least a little bit of some of your recent travels and moving around. And I did hear you mention possibly looking at North Carolina. You know, we used to live for a very short time, but we lived in the Greenville, Goldsboro area. And I thought North Carolina was charming. I'd go back in a heartbeat.
Yeah, Asheville has been calling my name and coming in. Well, it was coming into my awareness before I was really upended and have been sort of, once again on this path of discovery. But Asheville, ever since I started paying attention, like, why does Asheville keep coming up? And the minute that I started saying, okay, well, let's look at Asheville, it was just like everything just started kind of opening up and exploding around that. So that's where I'm going next. And I hope it lives up to my sense of expectation of what's there for me. I guess we'll find out when I get there.
Let's just start there, because I find this interesting. I am also a person who's lived in many places for many different reasons. What up with you, all the moving around? How do you think about it now as you are entering, I understand it, your 6th decade here on the planet? What do you think about all that moving around?
I think when I was a kid, I always used to like to walk. When growing up in small town Wyoming, and before I had a car, before I was, a teenager with a driver's license, I used to always like to walk. Like that was my favorite way to process, to connect, and just to really kind of find myself. So of course, as a child, I didn't know that's what it was. I just had this penchant for wanting to go out and walk. And I think that has always been a method of discovery, a method of, sort of evolution and transformation for me. Certainly there were times when I was moving to run away from things. Certainly there were times when I thought I was moving towards something, but I was really trying to avoid something. But over the years, what I realize is, for me, it's just been about these places that I go to. There's always something that I'm supposed to get, and there's always something that I'm supposed to give. And so I just recently, I'd say probably over the past 4 years, I've just surrendered to that. I used to beat myself up with this, like, God, why can't I commit? Why am I so peripatetic? Like, what am I, I think I looked at other people who weren't moving because this was my 40-something time moving as an adult. And I think I used to look at that as a detriment or something was wrong. But now I see it's just kind of the way my soul likes to learn and grow. And so over the past 4 years, I've really come to realize that I am always carried, that there's always a reason for me to be there. And that reason is seldom at the exclusion of my own well-being. I always get something out of it too, from my human perspective. And I think that really it's just been about a journey of allowing myself to be guided and carried. And so the past couple of years, really my mantra has been, thy will be done. If you want me to go to LA, then I'm going to LA. If you want me to go to LA again, then I'm going to LA again. If you want me to, go to Colorado, then I shall. And, I'm here in Virginia Beach. And as I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go next, I was looking, this was in December of last year, so 2021. And I was suddenly realizing, like, okay, I've been in Colorado for almost 3 years with family. It's time for me to start figuring out where I'm going to go next. The clock is ticking, because that's the one thing I'm always clear on, is when that click happens and it's like, oh, it's time to go again. So I felt that click and I thought, okay, I'm just going to start to explore. I couldn't. And my one prerequisite was I can only go to places I've never been before. I'm not going back. I lived in New York twice, Seattle 3 times, San Francisco twice, LA twice. So I had to go somewhere I hadn't been before. And I wanted to be on a coast, at least initially, to explore, but I couldn't think of where. So I put my Airbnb search aside, woke up the next morning, and I just heard Virginia Beach. So I said, okay, that's where I'm going. So I booked a spot in Virginia Beach for a month. So here I am.
I love that so much. And the energetics of the place matters so much. And I've known that since being here at the farm, and the magical things that welcomed me once I hit this spot on the planet. But as we've gone through the last 2 years, and I've watched, the different pockets of the world and my friends and the things that they're having to go through, you must wonder about that too. The energetics of the location, of the people, of the rules and the politics and the restrictions and the chaos and the news of the day in those spots. You must have a lot of thoughts about that and the shifting things of going on in the world.
Yeah. And I think, it's not lost on me that my energy field is one that disrupts and transforms. That's just part of being who I am in this lifetime, that I just walk into a room and the shifts start to happen. And so I'm very aware that my field is often being put in a certain location just for that. And it's not necessarily about what I do, it's just about me being there. And so here in Virginia Beach, which is mostly a tourist town, it's also a big military town. And the neighborhood that I'm in, there's not a lot to do, frankly. I've just had a lot of time to go to the beach, hang out by myself, come home, take a nap, make some lunch, do some clients, do some writing. There is a really cool Edgar Cayce Center here, which I didn't know. I had no idea he had a big center here. So I'm actually going next week to have some sessions done and get some work done. And I was very aware of, like, okay, that's part of why Andrew the human came, was for that service and that experience I'm going to have. But really, I am aware of different politics and different requirements and different, mandates in different areas of the country. But what I have just said to my team is, I trust you. You're not going to put me somewhere that is unsafe. You're not going to put me somewhere where I'm in danger. You're certainly not going to put me somewhere where I suddenly have to make choices that go against who I know myself to be. So I just trust it. I just trust it. At this point in my life, I think I have finally gotten to the point where I can just say, okay, I don't have to know why. Yeah. And that's okay with me.
Gosh, I think that brings us right straight to the first word in our theory, or our theme, excuse me, not a theory, it's a theme. No theory here. There's nothing theoretical about the first word of our theme, which is integrity, because you just finished saying, you don't want to be put in the position of choices going against, what you believe and what you feel to be correct and right for you. And that's a big part of that word and that concept, integrity, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I think of integrity, I think of it as, integration. When we are integrated, we are in integrity. And when I think of disintegration, I just think of something that's incongruent or something that's sideways. I think of, a parallel line as opposed to, a line that's intersecting another. And so for me, it's just quite simple. Does it feel like it's true for you? Is the choice that's calling you forward something that feels expansive, even though it might be challenging? Let's get clear here. Just because it's the right choice for you doesn't mean it's going to be easy. One of the things that my guide said to me very early on was, you did not come here for easy, convenient, and comfortable. Nobody did. And so, especially in this lifetime, in this period that we're in. So for me, integrity, and everything, that's the cornerstone of my work, is only you know what truth feels like. And so everything for me is a feeling thing first. And what I have really come to realize is integrity is not only something we can choose and we can say yes to, but it's something that calls us forward. We say we want to live a life of integrity and authenticity, and then the opportunity to choose integrity and authenticity immediately presents itself, right? The saying that when you pray for patience, you don't get patience, you get the opportunity to be patient.
Yeah.
So integrity is a choice. And it's a feeling thing. And we all know when we're saying yes to something that isn't really our thing, or when someone's telling us a story that sounds really pretty, but there's something inside that's like, that does not feel correct. That does not feel integrated with me. And so I think integrity is something that we can choose and we can bring into our experience. And I also think that those things that are not in integrity are something that we can leave and release and sort of move out of our experience. So I do see it as like this flow of parallel lines, one moving in and one moving out, or we could see it as the infinity symbol, that constant exchange of energy. But integrity to me is, I know how I feel about it, and then I know what I believe about it, and my choices reflect that.
What do you say to people who might counter with what you've just said there is, if you're only worrying about you, then you are just really selfish and not thinking about others. How do you answer that?
I think that, in order to receive something, we have to claim it first. And what I know is if you want to heal the world, you heal yourself first, and then you share with people how you did it. So certainly it's important to have ideals and to see yourself as a part of the collective. But being a part of the collective at the exclusion of your own needs and well-being is not doing anybody any good. So selfish, there's nothing wrong with that. If my selfishness is allowing me to feed myself, to nourish myself and fill my own cup first, then that's what allows me to be a space holder or a source of those things for other people. If I don't know what truth feels like, I'm certainly not going to be able to hold the space for you to discover your own truth.
Yeah.
So this idea that I have to continue to cut off parts of myself, or what I say, it's setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. This idea, the martyr program has never worked for anyone, honey. Climb down off the cross and use the wood to build something useful. It just doesn't do anybody any good to deplete yourself in the name of others and then expect it to work out for everybody.
Oh my gosh, that felt so good to laugh. Thank you. Truly, thank you so much. More and more and more, I'm seeing like, we must laugh. We must laugh. I remember asking my mom, who was, raised in Nazi Germany with some relatives being of the Jewish persuasion, but her whole family was suffering nonetheless.
Yeah.
I asked, how did you fall in love in those times? How did you laugh? How did you anything? And I was always so interested in this, thinking as a child and young adult, I'll never have to go through what my mom went through. Well,
surprise.
And here it is. I wonder what you think about this idea as far as the collective. Do you think the collective, the humanity as a collective, are we getting more integrous or less than as a collective?
I think, I'm always, on the path of the upward spiral. I always see that there's a reason for it all. There's a method to the madness, and there is always sense even in the chaos. And I think what we are being shown is that ultimately integrity and even, power and truth, because I see, this theme for the series is so apt and so potent for this time, because I see those three things as completely wrapped up in each other. They're not, I don't think, things that you can separate from each other. I don't think you can abstract one without the other. However, I think that what we're seeing in terms of integrity is we're seeing that it is an individual choice first and foremost. And then once you know what the resonance of integrity is, what does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? Then that gives you the ability to recognize it in others. Truth recognizes truth. So I think that we are being given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to say, wait, you're telling me this is true. You're telling me this is for my benefit. You're telling me that this serves the greater good, but does it? Because what I believe is that systems that liberate are built on truth. And so if a system asks you to do something that is untrue for you, it is not moving you towards liberation.
Golly, that's such a powerful concept and brilliant way of describing all of that. I want to rewind a tiny little bit to what you were talking about when you talked about being a walker, that you walk, and that's where some of this happens, and some of this integration, and that's when you feel good and when you think, and when some of this is going on for you, emotionally setting things where they go, and pondering these things, walking outside. More and more and more do I realize that our separation from nature, our separation from going outside it's not just inconvenient. It's not just maybe not even physically healthy, but it is so much cutting off part of, really some of the power that we have as these, mammals walking bipedal on the planet. If you don't get outside, you're missing some of that. And that's got to play into some of what you're talking about here, I think.
Absolutely. I think our relationship with our body mirrors our relationship with the planet, because our body is the planet. These molecules and these, ingredients that make up this thing called Andrew have been planets and stars and dirt and flowers and animals and other people. So there is nothing within me that is not billions of years old. And so I think that our body is an extension of the earth. From the earth we are born, and to the earth we shall return, at least physically. And so I think that when we begin to see what I do to my body, I also do to the earth. And what I do to the earth, I also do to my body. And I think for me, the most powerful thing that nature does for me is it gets me back into my body. It gets me out of my head. It gets me out of this imaginary world of clicks and keyboards and screens and LED lights. And it gets me back into the things that actually nourish me. It gets me back to the things that actually feed me and reciprocate the love that I pour into it. I look at it this way. We all drink from the same pot. Whatever I put into the pot, physically, energetically, emotionally, is what I also consume. And I think that that's a really, really easy way to separate people from themselves, is to separate them from the planet. If I do not have access to nature and things that are grown naturally and organically and with love and with care, how am I ever going to know what's possible when I begin to care for my body? I recently took a flower farming course last year, and that's a part of what I'm really looking at for my future, not being a flower farmer. I have so much respect for farmers, but even after a season of just, farming a tiny, tiny portion of an acre last year, there's no way I could do that solely. Like, that's a lot of backbreaking work. But what I reminded me of is the power that is present when you remember how to care for and nurture another living thing. And if I know how to grow a plant or a flower or take care of an animal, those skills are ones that I can also apply to myself.
When Big T, came up with this concept of staying in your house, they took some of that away, didn't they?
Yeah.
Some of that recharging ability. They just flat took it away. The visions of some of the, the padlock playgrounds or the basketball hoops or the sand put into the skateboard parks.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible, isn't it? You're near the ocean, and there's something about the salt and the salt water that's so incredible. What are your thoughts about that? Because I know you're like, I need to be by the ocean.
Yeah.
And what do you think about when that smell comes across you, and when you consider the water and the salt and that we're water and all the things you just said right there?
Yeah. Well, I think, first we know that, electricity and energy flows better through alkaline systems. And so even the therapy of taking a salt bath, just immersing yourself in salt water, and the salinity of our blood and the salinity of the baby when it's in the womb and all of those things, we are supported by salt water. It is part of what nurtures us. And so when from an energetic perspective, when I'm in a salt bath, my field becomes so much more powerful because of the salt water supporting me. And my team has told me, like, we have some energy work to do on you. Get in the bath. That's going to be easier for your body to receive. And then going to the ocean, this massive, massive body of salt water, that in and of itself is healing. That in and of itself is nourishing and nurturing, but there's also something to the immensity of it and the enormity of it. Yesterday, it was finally warm. The weather here's been a little crazy. And so yesterday, finally, it was a warm day that I had off, and I'm literally a block from the beach. So I walked to the beach, and it was still cold. The water's still cold. It's the Atlantic, and it's still February, but I thought I want to get my feet in the water. And so I took my shoes off, rolled up my pants, and walked in just a couple of feet into the water. And it was just this moment of everywhere I could look, not behind me, but my whole 180 view was just nothing but the ocean. And suddenly I was reminded of how I am part of a much larger system. I am part of the sun and the moon and the stars and the oceans that only want the best things for me. And when I remember how to work in partnership with them, when I remember how to co-create with these ancient forces that govern all things, it immediately taps me into that flow of all the things that we all say we want, right? Power, integrity, flow, abundance, authority, truth, all of those things. Nature shows us how to do that and how to be that. So for me, the ocean is about surrendering to a power that is so much greater than I am as an individual, but also that same power runs through me. So it's this really beautiful thing to just allow yourself to be held in that moment by this massive force.
It really brings things into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you've got your feet in the water like that, and you can't help, at least I can't help but think of all the other eons of time that have gone before, with all of the dramas of the day, of all of those people that came before us, and how some things are the same. And, putting your feet in the water is the same. And unless there's a pier right there or something, that view is the same as, somebody who might have seen it long ago. I know that you've spent time and have lived here, at least at brief times here in Kansas. Are you aware of the big salt mine that's nearby? I've started thinking a lot about this. I spent a great deal of time just yesterday talking to a woman who, she's a healer herself, but she's feeling herself faltering a little bit, and we're going through daily practices, and I asked her about, do you get into salt water, Epsom salt baths? I find myself craving them once a day minimum. I've been known to do more than one a day, depending on what's going on. And she said to me, she happened to live in a place that only has a shower right now, and she misses them terribly. And so we talked about some practices and some alternative things that she could do to satisfy that really primal urge to sit in that substance. But some of the things that you're saying here, I want to talk about a little bit, which is when you don't see anything. One of the things I used to do right here in Kansas, even in the years before I knew I was going to get into any of this work, and actually when I was about 15 years old, I think it was, I just was drawn to this place not far from my father's house, and it was the edges of the suburb, but I had a horse, and I knew where I could take my horse on dirt roads, and I knew where the fence was down and other people's property that they probably wouldn't mind one way or another if I would go walking that way. And there was this place, and it was actually a skeet shooting club. And when they were not shooting skeet, I could slip in along this fence line and go way back past all of the setups of that club there. And I could take myself to a place on the prairie, and it was situated in such a way, and there wasn't a large area of it, but I knew I could get to this place on the prairie where I could spin on my horse and look and see nothing but a circle of grass, just only grass, no telephone poles, no houses, no fences, no structures, no anything, and feel a little bit of that whole idea of, the waves of grain, or, the oceans and in the grassland sense of things. And do you know, Andrew, I didn't allow myself the pleasure of imagining how profound it was at the time. I had to become an adult to do that. But what I actually had was a spontaneous memory of a past life doing that at one time. And me at 15, I just thought, oh, well, I've got a good imagination, is kind of the way I thought about that for a very long time, until I got into this work. But it was when I sat myself in that circle and I imagined, and for me, whether it was spontaneous, a dream, or being taken on a past life regression or other sort of spiritual experience, I've actually found that my own lives have focused on this pattern of integrity, power, and truth. Even then, and I found myself as like this female Native American who, I was doing something I wasn't supposed to do, but I felt compelled to do, and it had to do with horses. And I'll spare you all the details of that. But I know that I've collected these feelings, these powerful feelings and emotions that I have felt exploring all the different points of expression and lives and experiences that I've had in my life. And this collection of words, the integrity, power, truth, have been a part of that. But going back to Kansas. So you've probably heard of Carey salt, right? Carey salt, C-A-R-E-Y. Well, it's the name of a salt. It's not Morton's or whatever, but there's a Carey salt brand, and you probably know where Hutchinson is. It's not far from Wichita, and not far from there are these incredible salt mines, and they're huge. They're, I think, the second largest maybe in the country. And there's a product actually out there. I'm not affiliated with it, but it's called ASEA. It's a long story, but it has to do with using the power of some of this very pure salt. But, Kansas, one of the reasons it is so relatively flat and without mountains, as it were, is because this used to be the ocean. And that salt and that collection is oceanic, right? Which I find kind of incredible, because there is sort of this, a narrow-minded view of some humans about the quality of life we might have here on the prairie in Kansas, where there's nothing, and you're so far away from any mountains and so far away from any salt, and, or any seawater. And I've actually really been, it's hidden power. And the whole thing about the Flint Hills, well, it's opposite. It's the wind going this way and taking up the earth and revealing the mountains in the opposite way than when they come up from the ground like that, tectonically with plates and everything. But so I feel like, even though it's been quite some time, and I really wonder when it might be that I see an actual water-filled ocean again for a while, because I sure am not getting on a plane anytime soon. Just not doing it. There's something about that magic and that energy that's right here in Kansas.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And when you were sharing your story, it reminded me of a couple of things. Is nature has given us everything we need, and she's always pointing us towards these solutions and these innate treatments. And your desire as a child to just be in a place where it was only you and nature, I think that that's an innate part of who we are, that knows that that's good for us, right? Like, I remember when I was a little kid, and one of the things I used to love to do, and I didn't understand why until, again, much later in life, I can reflect back and see, I used to love to just lay in the grass or even in my bedroom floor and just stare at the ceiling or stare at the sky for hours doing nothing. And at the time, I didn't think of it. I'm just daydreaming. I'm just sitting here doing whatever. But I see now that I knew intuitively and innately that I was giving my mind time to rest. I was giving my mind time to reset and just be still. I was giving my body an opportunity just to tune into those natural rhythms without being in my head and the thinking mind being in the way. So I think that when we listen to those nudges and those prompts, it's always something that if we're curious about, it's going to lead us to something that we need. And I love your understanding of the salt being there. And even though the water's not there, the salt is there and it holds memories. And, that salt is, as old as the earth. So it knows, it has power, it has, strength in it. And even if we just allow ourselves to connect to the element of water, even if we are in the middle of, a landlocked state or a landlocked town, you can still tap into that frequency and that energy and call it in. So it's always available to us. We just have to be willing to be curious about it.
Right. I mean, one of the suggestions I gave to my client yesterday was, you may not have a bath and you may miss that, but you could fill a dish pan with salt water, Epsom salts, and stick your feet in there. You can do different towels. And I guarantee you're going to feel some relief doing that, especially if you've been used to immersing yourself in Epsom or salt water in the past.
Get a kiddie pool. Fill your kiddie pool with Epsom salts and water and just hang out in the backyard in the kiddie pool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gosh, I'm thinking about so many things. Still a little bit about placement and where people are and everything. My daughter right now is in Japan, actually.
Wow.
Her husband is in the Navy. And so she and her family are stationed in Japan. And when my father was an early career Air Force officer, he and my mother, he was stationed and he and my mother lived there. And my only sibling was born there on a beach called Okinawa. Okinawa, which is, there's a very famous war story and historical battle that happened there, which I won't go into, but I don't know why. I'm not even sure why I'm bringing this up, except for it's just in my own memories and it's bubbling up and I've learned to go with my intuition and talk about it. Maybe I'll figure out why I'm mentioning this again. Maybe it's just because I know exactly what it is. As a matter of fact, my team's going ding, 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 ding back. I think they're helping me have some sort of revelation here, right, with you. And I think you're right about you just coming in and disrupting the energy or stirring it up or whatever. And I mean, not in a bad way or not in a way that's not helpful. But I had this experience, Andrew. It's one of my earliest memories as a child. And I probably was only about 16 months old. So, I mean, I'm very, very young when this thing happened. And listen to what happened. My mother was pregnant with my brother at the time, and she's sitting on a beach towel or blanket or whatever. And my dad is with me and we're very close to the water's edge. And my dad takes me to the water and he sits like parents do with their legs like that. And I'm sitting, because I'm just a toddler, right in front of him. And the waves are coming up just enough to catch our feet and for us to have fun like that when this thing happens. And here's what happens. As you know, every once in a while, there's kind of a little bit of a rogue wave and it's not acting like all those other waves. And here comes this wave, and it was a little bigger than what Dad expected. But not only that, you know what it did? This wave came up, washed over us a little more aggressively than he realized what was going on, meaning higher. But it deposited upon me a jellyfish of the variety called Portuguese man of war. I don't know.
God.
You know what one of those
look
like?
Those are serious. Yeah.
Those purple, they look like purple things. And not only listen to how serious it actually was. This man of war deposited itself. I mean, just think of the energy things that are going on here. It took me, ever to understand the power. And I think I'm learning even right now a little bit more about what it was. And the whole thing blasted and sort of stuck from my left shoulder to my left hip.
Wow.
It came in and went like this. And all of that poison went down my body like this. Oh my gosh. If the downloads that are coming in to me right now are pretty amazing. I mean, I'm going to have to take notes when we're done talking, but a little bit of what it is, I'm going to allow myself to speak about. But anyway, my dad, of course, throws that thing off, and even he's injured by throwing it off. Right.
Yeah.
He scoops me up and he begins to run. And here's the really fascinating thing. I leave my body. I have an out-of-body experience because the pain is intolerable. It's intolerable. But forever and ever and ever, I thought the movie, the thing that I remembered in my mind of the event was simply some sort of recreation of what was told to me, what happened, right? And then at some point, several years ago, I'm like, that's not me taking somebody else's description of it. I was viewing it from outside my body.
Wow.
I was viewing it from outside my body because somehow there was like a little first aid station or something like that, and relatively nearby. And my dad takes me to this place. And then I do the classic thing, which is they kind of put me on just a very rudimentary table that happened to be in this place, but I'm seeing it from the corner above in the room. And that, I think, finally was kind of how I realized, okay, wait a second. Even if it was somebody else's story, being up in the corner of the room and looking down on my own body and all of that stuff. And I think the combination of everything there did something to me, my body, my energy system. Not that it was in the end a detriment. I think it was I sort of think about those like the shocks, that you
totally
medically, but I think that's set up something in me that reverberates to today.
Yeah, I agree. It makes me think of, I have a friend who's been living outside of the US. He's been in Mexico for the past almost year, actually about a year now. And he had an experience where, he's staying in this small little like beach village. And he had an experience of being stung by a scorpion like 3 times in a row. And he, 3 separate occasions. He is a Scorpio. And so for him, it was all about that same thing. Like, certainly there's the human experience of like, oh my God, what just happened? I'm panicking. Am I going to die? Like, I have to look up, and it's one of the little ones. And that's what they always say, right? Like, don't be afraid of the big scorpions. It's the little ones that'll get you. So, he went to the guy who owns the place he's staying. And the guy was like, you should be okay. Like, these are the symptoms you can expect. And he gave him some remedies of what he could do. But really for him, once he was on the other side of it, he was like, that was all about transformation. He was like, that was all about an initiation. And, if you were familiar with astrology and Scorpio being that sign of transformation, and it moves from its lower expression as the scorpion into the phoenix or, the eagle. So there's so much ripe in there for interpretation. And it does feel like for you at that young age to have that experience where you're literally able to see things from a different version of reality, which is so much of what I see happening this year, is the separation of worlds, is it does give you a perspective that stays with you and clearly is still at this day and age transforming you in some way, because your understanding of it continues to blossom. So I think it's like that, I think, is kind of the thing of like, thy will be done. Like, clearly as a child, it's not a conscious choice that you're allowing this to happen, but clearly at some level it was chosen for Candace by you at some level. But there's so much there. And I think that when we allow ourselves to see a larger picture, when we get out of just a minimized, like portioned off narrative that only says, no, this is the only hole you can look through, look through the keyhole and that's the truth. When you step back and go, no, wait a minute, I'm not going to just accept this minimized version. I'm going to knock the wall down. I'm going to bust open the door. Screw just looking through the keyhole. I want to see the whole freaking room. And in fact, I want to leave the house and see the house in the context of the whole world. Like, give yourself and reclaim that authority to say, I'm the one that gets to decide what my perspective is. So that's so beautiful that even as a year and a half, you are able to have that experience and remember it.
Kind of crazy. You ever been stung by a scorpion, Andrew?
I have not.
Oh my God.
And I don't plan on it.
I've been stung a couple of times, and I can tell you that the little ones are the ones, truly the ones that hurt. I got stung living in Austin, Texas. I got stung. And you know what? It was like, are you kidding me? I mean, there was like some real lessons learned here too. I was spending a day outside, literally moving rocks with big leather gloves and different things, and watching and looking for all the scorpions and making sure that, you know, I am very respectful and I'm looking for them and I'm not wanting stung and all that. And I've had enough. I've been out there. I'm hot as anything. I need a drink. I come in to our garage. Our garage had a sink. Some garages do. That house had a little sink in the garage. And I thought, okay, I'm going to just take off some of my things here. And I took off my gloves, and I was getting ready to turn the water on in the sink. I don't know, maybe just wash my face or whatever. I started to turn the water on, and I looked, and in the drain of the sink, there was some leaves and debris. So I just was like, well, I better take that out of there. I mean, I just taken off my gloves. You know what's coming here, right? Yep. You know coming, and I reach in like that, and I got it right here in my middle finger. And do you know the scream that I let out? And I mean, I'm here. This is a woman who's given birth twice without medication, and been through kidney stones and all of that. But the primal scream that went through me with this sting. And I remember, because I didn't quite know what to do with myself. Nobody was at home. I don't think. I went into the house, and I'm still screaming my head off. And I go get ice finally, but to this day, I'll never forget my cats and dogs. One cat actually, because she was trying to get away from me, like she was near a plastic bag that happened to be anyway, next thing I know, she got torn up in it, and she's pinging off the walls, and the whole thing was absolutely nuts. And I put ice on my finger. But, and then it finally keeping ice on it, I finally could start to breathe. Do you know, I think it took several hours for every time I tried to take the ice away, I could no longer bear the pain.
Wow.
Even after that. And that night, my lips were numb. I had numb spaces on my body. I mean, that poison is something.
It's no joke.
It is something. But, I just, that whole thing too was, I'm going out into the land of scorpions, and we're going to do things correctly so that you don't have to sting my ass. And sure enough, I mean, I come back into my house, and I do one tiny little thing without the leather gloves. And it's like, oh yeah, you think you're going to do that? No, you're denied. You're denied.
Yeah, well, and I will be done, right? If you're going to get stung by a scorpion, you're going to get stung by a scorpion. And sure, you can take precautions and do the safe thing and the right thing. But hey, if it's in the card, it's in the cards.
Yep. Well, the last word on our theme is truth. And we've already talked about it a little bit, how it weaves into integrity and power. But here's something, even before the last couple of years, here's a thing I'm sure you've looked at. I would love to have you look at it with me right now. The whole concept of my truth versus your truth, and the idea of it intersecting or being completely apart. And I wondered too a little bit, because I know you're into astrology, does any of that have to do with where we are with Pluto returning this year? This whole concept of truth and my truth and your truth. And I don't know, maybe I'm drawing some lines where there aren't any, but can you talk to me about that?
Well, I think it's interesting because, hang on, I just want to make sure my do not disturb is on, because it's about to expire. And I just want to make sure, there we go, that we don't get interrupted. Okay. Truth, the Pluto and Capricorn thing is huge. And, we can talk about it from a million different angles, but what I will say is that empires last on average about 300 something years. That's, or close to 300 years. That's about the amount of time that it takes Pluto to return. Pluto is all about the king being toppled from the tower and from the top of the mountain. Pluto rules plutocrats. So those who have just sort of been born into power and wealth and, you know, sort of control, they're not going to have that much longer. So there's a lot of ways we can look at it, but I think that, you know, my truth versus your truth, or I think that there is big T truth. You know, there's the eternal truths. There are the universal truths. There's little T truth. An example of that would be, I am Andrew. That's a little T truth. I am not going to be Andrew forever. Andrew is a limited time engagement, but it's true now. And I think truth is a very interesting thing, that when you have not cultivated for yourself what truth feels like, because that's the key, is truth always feels like truth. And it doesn't have to feel, my truth doesn't have to be your truth, but I can recognize that what you are saying and sharing reverberates with you as true. And I can make room for your truth to be in the same room as mine, even if what you believe is true is counter to perhaps what I believe is true. That doesn't have to threaten my sense of truth. That doesn't have to threaten my experience or my existence. I think that we have been, do I want to say hoodwinked into believing that there's one truth? I think in this reality where it's all about thumbs up, thumbs down, like, unsubscribe, cancel, block, delete, whatever, we've had these binary choices sort of shoved down our throats. Luckily, I'm of the generation that I, you know, being Generation X, we're the last generation to remember what life was like as an adult without this technology, without the internet. So I think it's a little easier for me to recognize my own truth because I kind of had to find it at a very early age. And I didn't grow up in this very limited, narrow perspective of what is true or what is right or wrong. And I think we've been hoodwinked to believe that untruth is bad. I think we've been hoodwinked to believe that if you don't agree with everything I say, then you're against me. I think we have, you know, our critical thinking, we have abandoned at some point collectively. We, for whatever reason, aren't even allowed to ask questions. We aren't even allowed to say, wait, is that true? I'm just confused. I don't understand. I don't see facts, or I don't feel a resonance of truth with what you're saying. And so I want to know more. We've been taught that even that line of thinking is somehow heretical. So I think that truth is a very tricky thing when we believe that it comes from another. When I believe that if I give you my vote, if I give you my money, if I give you the keys to my castle, if I give you my power, if I give you whatever, that you're somehow going to tell me what is true, that's dangerous. Because what is that person's motivation? What do they stand to gain by you believing in their version of things? And I'm not saying that it is necessarily untrue. It could very well be, it just so happen that what you're saying is true, and it also happens to be true for me. But this idea that somehow that we shouldn't have our own resonance of truth, or that we don't have access to it, or that if what we believe is true, or if we are just even unclear and we haven't decided what is true, we're not allowed to ask questions. I'm not allowed to type certain words online without getting my account banned or banished or abolished. Like, that's dangerous to me. And I don't care what side of any issue you're on. Your truth is yours. And you don't need anybody's permission to believe what is true for you, nor do you need anybody's permission to put that into action. You have a body. You have a lifetime, you have guidance, you have an intelligence, you have consciousness that was given to you by the Creator. So who am I to question that? So if what you say is true for you, and I can say, wow, yeah, I kind of scan through my own experience, and sitting in the presence of Candace, I can see that what she is saying and doing is true for her. Cool. So what? It doesn't threaten me if what you say disagrees with what I believe is true. And I can make space for your truth to be true. It was this, what is that? God, I can't remember. I think it was an Aristotle quote, but it's basically saying, like, the ability to entertain another idea, the ability to investigate another belief system without claiming it as your truth, is a certain kind of intelligence. And we have lost that intelligence.
Who is it that said truth is like a lion, it defends itself?
I love that.
Yeah,
it's so true. And I think it's the Buddha quote, you know, three things are not long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth.
Yeah.
If you just sit in your own authority and you observe long enough, this is what Kuan Yin said to me years ago when we were working together. And she said, Andrew, water finds its own level. You don't have to control it. Water doesn't stop. If it's in the river and it's a big boulder's in the way, the water doesn't stop and have an existential crisis about whether it's right or wrong. Did it make the right turn? It goes under it, it goes over it, or it spends a couple of decades boring through it. So the truth will not be stopped and the truth will come. But what's so crucial, and I see this all the time, especially if I'm working with someone who's younger and perhaps is looking for love. I want a boyfriend. I want a girlfriend. Why? I don't know. Well, what is a relationship to you? I don't know. It's a boyfriend or a girlfriend. That's it. That's the only. So it's like sending someone to the store for chocolate cake who has never seen it before. They're going to bring you broccoli. They're going to bring you, laundry detergent. They're going to bring you all sorts of things, but they won't be chocolate cake. My point being, figure out what truth feels like for you. And if it doesn't feel congruent, if it questions your integrity and tells you that you are powerless unless you do this thing, be really, really suspect of that. And get in your frickin' body. Turn off the TV, turn off the laptop, put your phone down or put it on vibrate, go outside and sit somewhere and breathe for 5 minutes and begin to pay attention what's going on with your body. The body never lies. The body never lies. And so when you are back in the body and you're asking yourself, okay, let me just feel what this feels like. This is one of my favorite exercises. So I'll say, red is blue. Let's say that I've been told that what I always thought was the color red is not, that it's actually blue. So I sit with myself and I go, okay, red is blue. I believe that red is blue. What does my body do when I say that? Does it feel restrictive? Does the body say, I don't know, do I contract from that? And then I say, okay, red is red. What does that feel like? So you can put these thoughts through your own filter. You can make these statements. I use this for decision making a lot, like, okay, I'm going to go. Today, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to spend 3 hours on the beach. What does my body feel in response to that? I can already feel it. My gut's like, no, we have things to do, right? My gut's like, we have other things to do. But then, okay, today I'm going to stay inside. I'm not going to go outside. I'm going to stay inside all day. What does my body say to that? So you can entertain an idea and a thought without posting it on your social media and saying, now this is who I am. And you don't owe anyone an explanation. That's the other thing. I think we've been hoodwinked into believing that we somehow have to defend our truth, especially when it, misaligns with somebody else. Why do you want that? Because it's true. Why do you say that? Because I know. Why are you doing it? Because I am. I don't owe you an explanation.
We have an internal guidance system, don't we? I think, it's tries to be hijacked very often. What do you think about, and let's kind of end on this anyway, because we've spent such a lovely time together and I don't want to keep you.
I could talk to you for hours, that.
Oh my gosh, exact same way. I have missed you. There's this thing when people I think they proclaim a truth or they broadcast a truth or they blazon it upon them and they feel like they have to keep it forever. A little while ago, you used a word changeable when in talking about truth. And I guess I've not had so much a problem with that because it makes me giggle a little bit. It's very easy for me to think, I used to think that was true. It's very easy for me to make that declaration. And it becomes, the older I get, I'm a good 10 years older than you are, the more I kind of laugh at myself at what I did used to think. But it's almost seems these days like we don't allow ourselves to do that, or some don't allow ourselves to do that. And I wonder, is that culturally driven? I mean, do you think about that? Where's that come from? And how do we help others realize it's okay to change?
Well, I think that's the thing, I've been reading a lot of Jane Roberts' The Seth material. And, one of the things that Seth says is you are always in a state of becoming. Like you're not static. You're not just a lump sitting there waiting to die. Like you are all, and the universe is a constant fractal expression. It is always in a state of becoming that which it is. And so I think that we have forgotten And especially in this decade, this time where we're so quick to judge somebody, we're so quick to deny somebody, we're so quick to, exclude somebody or a narrative or an idea from our reality that's just because it's uncomfortable or it's inconvenient or I don't want to deal with it. And I think that we have forgotten that people are allowed to change. People are allowed to evolve. You have the right to make a mistake. You have the right to be wrong. You have the right to screw up and go, oh. And you also have the right and the responsibility to take accountability for when you realize, oh, crap, I don't believe that anymore. And beliefs are disposable. That's the beauty of belief. And people push back on that. And I say, think of Santa Claus. There was a time in your life when you believed with all of your heart that the man in the red suit was coming down the chimney to leave you gifts under the tree. And then at some point, your parents said, actually, maybe we need to put a disclaimer in there for like anybody who still believes in Santa Claus, don't watch this part. But you know what I'm saying? And then you sort of adjust your worldview. And it's the same thing. You have the right to ask new questions and to say, well, maybe I was wrong. But, we've turned it into the public square and the hanging of people for being wrong or saying something that, perhaps they decided was different later or what have you. But I think it takes courage and bravery to stand by your truth often, but I think it also takes courage and bravery to admit when your truth has changed and take responsibility for what was created in the name of what you now see was untrue. And I think that we just don't have many models of that in the public sphere right now. I think for anyone under the age of 25 or even 30, I think the examples of integrity, the examples of truth, and the examples of the power that are innate when you move from integrity and truth, I don't think they've seen a lot of that.
No.
So if your models are all versions of distortion and corruption and subterfuge and obfuscation and no accountability, and let's be honest, let's be clear here. Accountability is not just saying, I'm sorry on Twitter and then moving on. No, accountability is sitting down with yourself and saying, what have I created? What is the impact of my choices had on other people? And how can I make sure that what I've created, I am accountable and responsible for? We just don't see a lot of that.
Nope, we really don't. And that brings us all the way back to full circle, right? Because if you can feel that within you, you're back to being standing in your own integrity.
Yes.
So,
and if you want a world based on truth and integrity, bring your truth and your integrity to everything you do as often as you can remember to. If you want to see a world where everyone gets a seat at the table, make room for all of your entering differing selves and opinions and thoughts and conflicting ideas and beliefs and figure them out. You can do that work and it doesn't cost anyone anything. There are thousands of hours of content out there available all around these topics that you can find for free. If you got a device and an internet connection or a library card and you can go use their computer, you have access that you need. And you don't even need that. You can sit down and begin these practices of inner inquiry. Get curious about yourself. Sit down and ask yourself, hey, spirit, universe, self, God, whatever you call the divine, show me what's true. Show me where perhaps I have, offloaded my authority. Show me perhaps where I've tried to give my power away. Show me perhaps where I have lived in service of something that is not true. But you got to start somewhere.
Another reason why going outside just makes that easier, because there's, if you go walk in the woods or walk on the beach, there's not a lot of untruth that your feet are covering.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's pretty real and pretty true, right underneath you.
Yeah.
I feel nourished having spent an hour talking with you, Andrew Martin. Can you tell our listeners how they may find you and your work?
Yes. andrewmartin.energy is my website. And you can go there and you can read all about the services that I offer, my mentorship program. My YouTube channel is Andrew Martin Energy. I do weekly oracle card readings and I do monthly energy transmissions. And then every once in a while I'll pop on there with something else. Speaking in terms of free tools, I have an entire playlist entitled Tools for Spiritual Transformation. It's free. It's hundreds of hours of content on my YouTube channel. So people certainly can begin there if there's something that strikes their interest. Just be curious about why you might be drawn to things. But yeah, that's how people can find me. And, what I always tell people is I have a service called the Focus Session. It's a half an hour. It's like $60. If you're not sure of what I do, or you're not sure if I'm the person to work with, or you're just curious, book one of those and we can see what we can do together.
I guarantee you'll enjoy it. Before we go, Andrew, I want to give you just one little gold star, and that is, and it may have been in 2019 around there, but you basically bid adieu to Facebook, saying, I'm not doing this anymore. And I just want to say to you, you know, kudos for your intuition there, because the metaverse.
Yeah, I pieced out to Facebook and Instagram. I still have my personal account on Instagram, but I just go on there and I'm like, what is this? I don't.
Right.
I mean, there's value there. I won't discount. There's some amazing individuals within those spaces doing really good work. I just couldn't be one of them anymore. I had to piece out and just leave it all behind.
The day I read about what that was and my alarm bells went off, you were right here. You were right here. Andrew saved himself before any of that happened. Thanks again, Andrew. I hope to talk to you again really soon. All right. And everyone else, stay tuned for the next episode of Quantum Realms 2022. Thank you. Bye.